So I guess that I've managed to get up and carry on each time eventually, but it's not like that happens straight away. So for example, when my brother committed suicide, that's probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me, apart from my mum dying, or maybe they're both pretty horrendous. So yeah, straight away I was in shock, I think like anybody. And then I realised actually that I was sliding into depression, and I just thought, I'm never going to get out of this. So it's not like I'm some magical person that just can carry on through everything. And actually that time when I realised that I just didn't know how to get out of it, I got some counselling. So I had some CBT counselling, and actually that managed to kind of like gradually pull me out of where I was and kind of set me back on track. So I mean, I think when I was younger, I wish I'd had counselling, like after my mum died, but there wasn't anything in those days. I think in general, maybe because I've had so many things kind of go wrong and I've gradually managed to get through them, that's helped me to kind of keep going when other things have gone wrong later on. So, I don't think I'm a particularly different to everyone else kind of person. I just think maybe my earlier difficulties have kind of shaped my character and maybe given me the kind of confidence right at the back of my mind that I can't always see, that has kind of kept me going through the difficult times, just so that I kind of eventually get out again sort of into a normal kind of life. But I mean, a lot of the time I felt like giving up. It's not, like I'm a generally happy person, maybe that helps. But I think that, yeah, a lot of the time I completely felt like giving up. Like really after my brother died, I just thought my life is shit and I'm never going to get out of it. I felt like that for quite a long time. So, yeah, so it's not like I just bounced straight back or anything. I'm normal. But yeah, like, a few years ago, my best friend died as well. And again, I was straight kind of down into, this is horrendous, what am I going to do? And then just kind of like gradually work my way out of it again. Well, I think history all the way through has not shown the role that women have played. And, as time goes on right now, we're starting to see that more and more, that actually there's all these amazing women that were doing stuff all the way through that we've never heard of. And, I guess because traditionally men have been in charge of everything, kind of like going back. And so gradually we're getting kind of more diversity, more women in leadership and decision-making roles. But, it's a gradual process, and I just think that's what our society's been like. Men were in charge, and, if you look back at kind of Victorian times, I think like the accepted opinion was that women kind of weren't men's equals. Even Queen Victoria, a woman, thought that she was not a man's equal. So, and she was pretty kind of girl power for her time. So I just think that that's what our society's been like. But, I'm delighted that we are finally kind of like really showcasing these amazing women who've done incredible things. Oh, wow. So I think Steve Jobs is kind of like a really iconic role model. And yeah, in some ways a good role model, in other ways a bad role model. And, when we kind of put people up on pedestals, they're not going to be perfect because no one's perfect. So there's that. I mean, I think the fact that he managed to kind of get Apple really going and kind of like, I use an iPhone, I've got a MacBook, and I just love the design. So I totally think that, him working with Johnny Ive just kind of like revolutionized that whole area. And, I'm definitely glad that we've got those products because they're lovely. Their battery life might not be so great, but, they're very nice to use. And it's quite interesting because like when I started my degree, so like back in '89, we were using kind of like dumb terminals really. We didn't even have PCs then. And I remember when I saw the first time I saw a Mac and used a Mac and used a mouse, so like I couldn't even use the mouse. It's so funny, I can remember how hard that was. And then as soon as I kind of got used to it, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It really was kind of a step change, I think. So, he's had a great influence design-wise and product-wise, and yes, so maybe some aspects of his personality not so great, but nobody's perfect, I guess. Well, I think there's already been female Steve Jobs, we just don't know about them so much. So I mean, we've had Steve Shirley in the UK, who's not exactly Steve Jobs, but she set up one of the world's first software houses that employed I think more than 300 women, and specifically mainly women who were married and working at home, because back in the 50s or 60s, like once you got married, you had to leave work, which is ridiculous, but that's just how it was then. So, you know, and they created great software like the Concorde Black Box flight recorder. And, you know, so I feel like I should have grown up knowing all about Steve Shirley, who's now Dame Stephanie Shirley. I should have known about her from when I was a kid, because she's an incredible pioneer. You know, that's 50 years ago. She was kind of like really ahead of her time, I think. And so I think she sold her company F International for about 150 million back in the 70s, and she's now one of the UK's major philanthropists. And most people don't know who she is, and I just find that ridiculous. I think it's like a new world for all of us, right? It's we haven't been here before, so I think no one really knows exactly what's the right thing to do, because we haven't done it before. And so, you know, I think everyone kind of needs to keep an eye on what everyone else is doing, definitely. I think it's very hard to say exactly what should happen, because again, until you kind of move something forward, you know, you don't know what the kind of ramifications and side effects are going to be of any decision making or legislation or anything like that. So I think, you know, it's something that I, you know, kind of really hope that big technology companies and governments and individuals will kind of work on together and kind of feel the way together to work out what is the best way to do things. And so, you know, we'll just kind of wait and see if that's what happens. I think that because we're all so connected together with social media and stuff now, I think when things do happen, like, you know, everything's a lot more transparent. So I'm not saying there's 100% transparency, but we do see what's happening within companies a lot more than we would have done 5 or 10 years ago even. So for example, like the women at Google walking out last week kind of in protest at the way that women have been treated at Google, you know, we can all see that, we can see it happening. And you know, I was chatting to someone from Google, a woman from Google last week, and she said she was out on the protest. So I think companies being more transparent, people working for companies being able to talk about what's actually happening within the company, I think that's the way forward, because then we can see what's happening and it's not all kind of behind closed doors. I mean, the thing is, you know, if you think about when the printing press was invented, right, it's a similar kind of situation, I think. You know, suddenly there was a lot of information that hadn't been out there before. And so you could say the same thing then, you know, like, also if I write this book or this pamphlet or whatever and distribute it to loads of people, well, you couldn't have done that before. So is that good or is that bad? And the thing is, it depends on the intent behind it and what you're actually writing more than the ability to be able to do it. So I think we kind of, you know, we all need to keep an eye out on what's actually going on as much as possible. And, you know, when we see something that doesn't look right, flag it up as an individual, as an organisation, as a government or part of government. We need to say what's going on, because I think one of the key things is that we need much more diverse teams working on products, working on algorithms, you know, that kind of all the machine learning, artificial intelligence. If we got diverse teams in all sorts of ways working on those algorithms, working on those products and services, then we're much more likely to have something that is fair, that is reflective of society, and that treats everyone in society fairly. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you know, it was early days of Twitter when we used Twitter to say Bletchely Park. And so what I'd done previous to that was with one of my colleagues, we sent in a letter to the Times. We got 97 heads and professors of computing to sign it. I'd got into BBC News, I'd got on the Radio 4 Today programme. So for me, that was all the things that I could think of in 2008 that I needed to do to try and raise awareness. So when I'd done that and got kind of a good reaction, but nothing substantial had actually happened, for several months I was like, well, I don't know what else to do. What do I do now? And I really didn't know. Like, I'm a computer science academic. I don't know about PR and marketing. So that was that. And then a few months after that, so towards the end of 2008, started using Twitter and realised reasonably quickly that just by typing Bletchley Park into the search box in Twitter, I could find everyone in the world who was already talking about, tweeting about Bletchley Park. And so that just kind of like, it was like a light bulb going off in my head. I thought, okay, so I can reach all these people. And basically kind of from there came up with various different ways of interacting using Twitter and social media to find different groups of people, you know. So I would type in every day Bletchley Park, see who's chatting about Bletchley Park, start conversations with them, anyone, you know, type in code breaking, see if anyone was talking about code breaking, and just, you know, start chatting to lots of people all around the world. And then also I had that moment where Stephen Fry tweeted a photo of himself, a selfie, like stuck in centre point with his friends, stuck in a lift. And I just saw that photo of Stephen Fry and I thought, Stephen Fry, he must care about Bletchley Park, like the history, the technology. So I Googled Stephen Fry Bletchley Park, and yeah, he'd said some great things about Bletchley Park. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to see if I can get him to come on board with the campaign. So I checked his profile. Luckily, he was following me, which meant I could send him direct messages, like private messages. So I did that night. And then the next morning, he tweeted a link to my blog, my Saving Bletchley Park campaign blog. And at that time I was getting, I think, about 50 hits a day on my blog. And one tweet from Stephen Fry, I got 8,000 hits. And I was like, it was like, again, like, oh my God, you know, I didn't realize this would happen like in such a big way. And that day I was the most retweeted person in the world on Twitter. And of course that will never happen again, unless maybe I have a fight with Nicki Minaj and Donald Trump or something, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it was just incredible. And kind of like through Twitter, over and over again, I was just looking for different ways to engage with people, interact with people, and of course get lots of people on board with the campaign. And you know, I mean, basically, eventually it worked. So, first time I went up to Bletchley Park in 2003, I didn't really know much about it at all. So I thought to myself, like, what do I know? Well, I know the code breakers work there, and in my head it was like 50 old blokes. I don't know why, but maybe that's what was kind of presented in the media. So the first time I visited, I found out that more than 10,000 people worked there, and more than half of them were women. So being a woman in computing, I was like, oh my God, all these women worked here during the war. I didn't know about it at all. So I went away, and that time raised some funding to run an oral history project. So I wanted to capture the memories of the women that worked there, because I couldn't find any of that information anywhere. And so I guess, you know, that's what really got me involved. And then it was a few years later at the launch of that when I found out that Bletchley Park was having financial difficulties and may have to close, that the work that was done there shortened the war by 2 years, and 11 million people a year were dying. So potentially it saved 22 million lives. And then I just thought, I've got to help save Bletchley Park. I just honestly couldn't stop myself. I was just like, I must make this happen. So I guess it's kind of, it's computing and technology, it's women, but then it's also, you know, the story of 22 million lives being saved. And like, what could be better than that to kind of draw you into something being really important? So my message to girls and women really is technology is a great career, a really great career. So, and you don't have to be like the biggest maths wizard ever to be in technology. There's technology involved in practically every job now, and going forward into the future, that's going to be just more and more so. And also technology jobs are really well paid. So not only do you have an interesting job, but you have a well paid job. So I think it's like, at the moment, the best career for anybody. In terms of organisations, I think, you know, you're really missing a trick if you're not encouraging girls and women to go into technology. I think all universities, colleges, schools should be trying to really persuade girls to study technology, or at least to use technology, create technology as part of other subjects even, because it's the language of the future. And if we're not getting girls into technology, if we don't have enough women in technology, if we don't have enough diversity in technology, it's going to affect all of us in the long run, and not in a good way. You know, we really need diverse teams, and women need to be a big part of that.